one of the problems that we can encounter with our game is the fact that as we play, drop into this, when our player dies, our enemies are actually still moving in the same way as they were. So if I just jump over and die, you can see that I actually got our enemies are there, and they're still in that same position, still in that same place. So they're not reset to the beginning of the level. I just actually need to move that player down slightly. They're not reset to the beginning of the level, to that start position. That might be something that you want to do. You might want to leave it like that, but you might want them to be reset to the beginning of the level. But we can do that. We can go through that process with a little bit of an adaptation of the scripts that we've already created. So again, if we go into our enemy script, I've already got that open. Let's go to our enemy script. There's a couple of things that we can do to help us with this. So go to the top in our variables that we created. Now a couple of things that we want to create. Now what we want is to retain the original position of our enemies. So we need to be able to record those. Now we've created some private variables to record those. So we have a vector 3 for the position and a vector 3 for the rotation. Now these will record the original position and rotation of our enemies and its original starting position. So we can place them anywhere we want on our game world, but we don't have to remember where they were, so we don't have to hard code them. We can get our enemy script to actually record those. So we create those. So we have a vector 3 for each of those. So as we move down, what we need to do is then actually record those in our start. So we use this as our initialization. So what we're going to do is get from our original position, we're going to place into that as a vector 3 this dot transform dot local position. So we want the local position. If I come in here, I click on an enemy slime, it will give us a local position of our enemy, which would be this position here. It's transform. So it would give me this value that I've got here. So it's X and it's Y position, which would be its local position here. And that's what would be recorded. And we also want its rotation. So again, we have the rotation values, and they would be recorded. So it has a rotation here. So we want to know which way it's going because we're going to be rotating it around. So we use again there, not just Euler angles, but we have local Euler angles because it's local to this actual enemy. So we use these two lines to record that within that. So moving down, we're going to take those, and we're actually going to create a new method for this. So this can be used to reset the position of the enemy when we want to. And all we're going to be doing, is super simply, we're going to reset those positions that we took. So we're going to reverse these two things around. So we took this position at the very beginning and we've held that, and we're going to reverse those two things around. So flip it around, we're going to actually say, okay, what is the position? And we're going to make it the original position that we took. And again, for the rotation, what is the local Euler angles? And we're actually going to give that the original rotation. Really simple. But when is this going to be called? Now we want to call this only when our player is killed. So we have a kill player script. And at the moment we're resetting the score and we're moving its transform back to the checkpoint. But what we want to do is actually do something else. So if I just uncomment this. Now a couple of things that we've got going on here. What we want to be able to do is for every enemy that we have, we then want to be able to reset the position of it. Now there's a number of ways that we could do this. We could actually place, have an array on this script and place all of our enemies onto this array. And we need to drag them in, and that's a bit cumbersome. But what we can do is actually tag all of our enemies with a specific tag and then use that. So I have an empty object here that I've put all of my enemies in. So I open that up. You see I have my enemy slime there, enemy 1 there, and enemy fly up there. All of those. And they've got tags. At the moment they're undefined. But what we can do is actually give them tags. Now we gave our player a tag and we've got other things, we've got tags up here. So if I add a tag, here I want to add a tag, and we're going to call this, let me just check what it is, it's enemies, so we want to give this, do that again, enemies, like so. So that you see that we now can tag our enemies with the enemies tag, like so. That means that all of our enemies, this game object has now a tag, has all the same tags. So anything that we produce like that, and you can make this a prefab as well. So we can make this the prefab and make it really simple to actually just define them. So all of those enemies now have a tag. Now what that allows us to do, if we go back to our script here, is to use this enemies. Now this is what we have here. So we have an array. So this is an array of game objects that are our enemies. So what we're doing is actually these two brackets here, which I'm going to remove and then add in square brackets. What these do is allow for an array of game objects, which is what we want. Now we've had game objects before, we've had a current checkpoint, and we've had our player, and now we're going to get an array of game objects, and they're enemies. So we want to gather up an array of game objects. Now, as I say, we could just place them in, we could drag and drop them in, but we don't want to do that, so it's a bit cumbersome. So every time you added one, you'd have to add this in and drag and drop it onto it. So what we're going to do is when we actually trigger this, we're going to grab all of the game objects that are tagged with enemies, and we can use this as part from our game object. So it's a method from game object. So what it does is find all the game objects with tag enemies. Now we could actually do this in a start script, or we could do this within our actually trigger. It's possibly better to do it in the start, but this I'm showing you for sort of brevity to do this here. So what we're doing actually is finding all the game objects with a tag of enemies. So that will give us an array of game objects, like so. Then the next thing we need to do is work through those. So we're going to iterate through it. And we can use the for each iteration. So for every game object we have, and we're going to call that enemy, in enemies, which is our array here, so in that, it's going to work through. So we iterate through it. So everything that's in, for each enemy that's in enemies, so each game object, which is an enemy, in enemies, what we're going to do is actually say, okay, I want to then run a specific script. So we then need to define what that script is. So we're going to say we want a specific script. Now we've written enemy script. So we've created that, which is our enemy script here, which you'll have as well. So enemy script there, we're going to say, okay, that equals enemy.getComponent, which is enemy. And that's actually our enemy script, which we created. So we've already created that, we're just pointing to it. So it's pointing basically to this. So we're able to access it. So we're getting that component. And then that allows us to get any of the components from that. So if I just press dot there, you'll see that I'm able to get a number of different things there. But what we want, all those things, what we actually want is to reset the position, like so. So we can get any of those objects, any of those methods that we've got in there. We're actually going to grab reset position, which is here, to reset them to the original position. So we can save that, and hopefully this now should work. So now if I press play on here, if I die, it goes back to the beginning. So it just shoved me off there. So you see that we have them in the middle there, and they go back to the beginning. So let's get that one down to the end, and then back to the beginning there. So it resets all of them back to their beginning positions, like so.